copy of the check, then you can coordinate with the buyer. Their bank, once it's pulled from their account, their bank should have one on file. But we can't really share that with them unless they want a hard copy of it. You'll want to make sure that your client kind of orders the inspections, and where we were talking about this vendor list, they have so many days to order the inspections according to the deadline so that you can submit that repair proposal or proceed as is by that end of the inspection period. So if your client wants to order, if your client has asked you to order inspections for them, you want to make sure that you have their written permission and that they agree to pay for the invoices, whether or not the deal closes or terminates. They will still be held liable for the fee. It's happened to us before where we have agreed to order an inspection for a client and then the deal didn't close and they tried to come after us for payment and they said, well, I'm not paying for that now that the deal didn't close. It's still their responsibility to. And so to avoid that situation from happening, you want to make sure that they have given you their explicit written permission and that they have agreed to pay all invoices whether or not the deal does terminate. And they must recognize that they will not hold you liable for the cost of the inspection if you order it for them, and they will not hold you liable for the inspection reports or any claims or anything terrible that happens if the inspector goes out to the property. If you've ordered it for them, you want to make sure that they will not hold you liable for any claim arising out of or in connection with any of the services from the vendors that you would order it from them. You would just automatically incur that liability if you order it from them, so you want to make sure that you've got something in writing saying that they will hold you harmless.
Sarah Dotley, anything for that?
Well, on this vendor list, it does say furnishing any names of vendors provided by whatever is done as a ministerial act and is only a courtesy. The undersigned acknowledges that they have the option to select any vendor, including not listed above, for good and valuable consideration, the receipt insufficiency, blah, blah, blah. Releases the broker's affiliated licenses and or his employees from any liability or claim arising out of or in connection with the services of vendor. So it basically covers you. This is if they give you the phone number and the vendor and stuff. You can make a note here. McKinsey will call this person. McKinsey will order on behalf of whatever client, and then it's all right here on this sheet.
Okay.
And then they sign that. The Tim Stout Group uses a different form. We have a North Carolina state form that we've kind of changed into a Tennessee thing. It's still binding, but I've just kind of made it more specific to what we've needed. But this vendor list basically has you covered as long as you say, McKinsey will order this on behalf of whoever, or Melinda will order this, or Donovan will. And that's in Dolly. For a VA loan in Tennessee, the seller is responsible for ordering the termite inspection, but then the buyer is responsible for all the other inspections. In Virginia, it's different. The seller is responsible for the septic inspection, the termite inspection, the well inspection, and the buyer is only responsible for the home inspection.
Okay.
So it's different in both states. But for a VA loan in Tennessee, the seller is responsible for ordering that termite inspection. And so you want to make sure that the listing agent remembers to tell their client this, or if you are the listing agent, that you tell your seller that they have to be prepared to cover the buyer's termite expense for the VA loan in Tennessee. And if your clients want to have the title company include any invoices for your client to pay at closing, they must acknowledge that they will still pay for the invoices even if the deal doesn't close. In the past, people say, do I have to pay this up front or can I pay it at closing? And you say, oh yeah, you can pay it at closing, but you still will be held responsible for it if it doesn't close. It's always good just to remind them of that, because you would be surprised at how shocked people sometimes are if they have in their mind that they're not going to pay for something until something closes, and then they just forget about it if it doesn't close. So you always want to make sure that that's told to them repeatedly.
Most of the ones that I just don't give them their inspection unless they've paid.
That's good.
They send
Yeah.
invoices, you're saying? Okay.
I mean, I usually call and set it up, but I'm like, here's your information, you call them,
Yeah.
the payment and everything.
That's good.
Yeah.
And sometimes the lenders in Virginia especially don't like buyers to pay for anything extra at closing, so it is a good idea to check with the lenders first to see if it would be okay for the buyers to pay for something on the closing statement at closing. Once that clear to close is obtained, then you can go ahead and schedule a time and place to close with the title company and all other parties. Sometimes the lender will do this for you, but so just kind of check with them to see if they've already called the title company to schedule closing, or if it's okay for you to, and then you want to check with your client to find a time that would work best for them. Then you can kind of go from there coordinating with other people. The buyer does have a right 1 to 2 days prior to closing to do a final walkthrough. So you just want to make sure that you have them sign a form in Dotloop called final walkthrough. And when Joey does the contract class, he's going to go through all of the forms that we should have signed. But in Dotloop, if you do start a buyer's loop or a listing or seller's loop, those forms that are required will auto-populate in the loop. So you don't have to try to worry about, man, do I need this form or do I not need this form? It should already be there for you. But then they can inspect the property 1 to 2 days prior to closing to make sure it's in the same condition or better as when they agreed to purchase the property. And then hopefully it is. We've had some bad experiences where the deal falls through because the final walkthrough has just been terrible. So they can terminate the contract even at that point if the house is not in the same condition or better as when they agreed to purchase it.
And you earn us money back?
Yes.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So the final walkthrough, if the home is not in the same condition or better as when they agreed to purchase it, and if they can prove it. So like where we've had it in the past, it was bad. There was like human crap on the walls. There was like cockroaches coming out of things. It was
disgusting.
it was like a
It was
hellhole.
bad. It's in Bristol, Virginia.
And
was
so, of course, you have pictures of everything, and then you say, no, this is definitely not the pictures that are similar to the property in the MLS, or when we saw the property at this time. So we're going to terminate, and you can't hold us liable because it's a seller's obligation to present the property in broom swept condition at closing, or broom clean condition at closing. So besides the normal wear and tear from weather or anything, it has to be maintained in the same condition that's clean. And if it's not, then the buyers can terminate. Then you'll want to make sure that your client knows that they need to switch utilities into their name, bring 2 forms of identification to closing just in case. Sometimes title companies ask for 2 forms of identification, sometimes only 1, just depends. They can use a homeowner's insurance policy as a form of identification if they don't have 2 forms of identification. A lot of people don't know that. That has maybe happened once where somebody did not have 2 forms of identification. So, but they can use that if they can bring that to closing. They need to forward their mail, bring the exact cash to closing. After you've received that closing disclosure from the title company, it'll have the very bottom, it'll have an amount that the buyer will need to bring to closing. And then you'll need to bring the earnest money disbursement from True North if it's held here. And throughout the transaction, I've also given you this notification form. And it basically has various items in it. I would just suggest reading through it, because basically whatever can happen throughout the contract, you just need to check on the notification, like, okay, the buyer has made a loan application and we've notified the seller. Sometimes, most times, people don't say that they've submitted their loan application and submitted the pre-approval. They just submit the pre-approval, which is written form enough to be all right. But like if the buyer has waived their financing contingency and wants to continue with cash, there's a notification checkbox here for that. If the appraised value did not equal or exceed the purchase price, the buyer can terminate the agreement, or you could renegotiate the purchase price. That notification is in here as well. If the buyer wants to terminate because of the inspection period, that notification box is in here as well. Basically, anything that could happen, you want to check this form, because the buyer or the seller may have an automatic right just to notify the other party without having to come.
Something on there if they don't want any repairs or whatever.
Yep,
Yeah,
to
that's
proceed
it.
as is.
Yeah.
So a lot of times this notification this just means that the buyer or the seller has the right to notify the other party without being in mutual agreement. So if it's on here, then you don't need both parties to sign it. It's just a notification from either the buyer to the seller or the seller to the buyer.
And they have to say, okay.
Yep. It's just them notifying because they have the right to do so within the contract.
Okay.
If it's within the timelines that either you've noted here, like if they're 1 day outside of their inspection period, they can't terminate because of the inspections. They can only do that within their inspection period. So according to the timeline outlined in the contract, whether you have that on this sheet or whether you've done it through Dotloop or your calendar or Folio or whatever you use, as long as it's within that time period, then they're able to use this notification form to notify the other party of the various items that could happen throughout the transaction process. So, Joey, the main reason that I had you was because
Are you ready for your main reason? Joe, you're not
Yeah.
paying attention.
I'm doing good.
Their clients.
So, Joey, we have been a brokerage for 6 months now, and you have been the broker of True North for 6 months.
Yeah.
And we would not be what we are today without you.
Oh,
And we all really appreciate
Joe,
you.
got to come.
And
I'm about to go to sleep. I
we,
swear. I swear I am.
and so we
Turn the
were.
camera on him.
Oh, okay. So we were all going to be here for the class today.
It's like it's my birthday.
I know.
I didn't eat for 4 months. Yeah, 4 months.
You know what
Yeah.
your birthday is?
No, it's at the end of the year. So.
But Joey, we really appreciate you, and
Thank
we're
you.
so thankful for everything that you're doing. And you have to open your present because you're gonna love it. So.
Oh, it's cold.
Oh, what could that be?
Holy moly. Homemade vanilla ice cream.
That's your favorite.
That's my favorite. Thank you. Thank you.
And then
Wait,
there's
there's more.
open your card too.
Oh, good grief. It's like it's my birthday. I swear. Olive Garden. You can't have to do that much. Jeez, I love Olive Garden. And I can tell Matt signed this Joey bag of donuts. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.